cool.
You too.
Awesome.
I feel like we should do the newscast.
Yeah, but like they did it in the 60s, when they're smoking and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Edward R. Murrow.
Yes. Maybe Walter Cronkite. This is Kansas City. Oh wait, that was Murrow.
No, he was
This
Good night. Good night and good luck too.
Yeah.
Or is that his line?
I don't remember.
Murrow?
I don't know.
I'm going to
I
Google
hope
that.
everyone can hear this.
Will Cronkite have a sign off?
We could go with that's the way the cookie crumbles.
That's where the You're on.
Oh. Good morning, Heartland. We are coming to you live from the Kauffman Foundation here in beautiful Kansas City, and wanted to say welcome to our Facebook Live event for the 2020 Heartland Challenge RFP. So we're here to discuss any questions that you have regarding the RFP application process, to provide some clarity around what we hope to see in this initiative, and also to share some fun facts about the Heartland, maybe a few jokes if we get that far. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got the dad jokes on lock. So I'm Melissa Roberts-Chapman. I'm a senior program officer here at the Kauffman Foundation. My background is working in and with ESOs just like you. So happy to answer any questions that you have in that vein. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Harris, Senior Program Officer in Entrepreneurship here at the Kauffman Foundation. My background is in entrepreneurship support, economic development, policy, anything and everything, and grant making and supporting entrepreneurs here at the Kauffman Foundation. Specifically, I support rural initiatives here as part of the Heartland strategy.
Awesome. So Chris is multi-talented.
Yes.
So please send us in your questions throughout the comment section. We'll answer them to the best of our ability during our time together. And if for some reason we can't get to them all, the answers will be posted to our RFP FAQ page next week. A lot of acronyms, sorry. So to start us off, I want to talk a little bit about the Heartland Challenge and what we're doing here. So this is a new request for proposal, open call for proposals that we're launching this year at the Kauffman Foundation. And we're looking to fund ESOs across the Heartland region, which we define as Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. So if you're coming to us from Oklahoma or Arkansas, I don't know, you're at the wrong foundation. The Southern Challenge is somewhere else. So though we've done national work in the past, we're really shifting our strategy to double down on our work in the places that we know best, so we can leverage our funding for greater impact, and ultimately serve more entrepreneurs with high quality supports throughout the region. So with that, please send in your questions. If you've got a couple minutes, let us know where you're watching from in the comments.
Yeah. And just a quick note, you'll probably hear us use the term ESO multiple times throughout the Facebook Live. And that is an acronym we use to mean any organization that is directly supporting entrepreneurs. And that's the work that we do. We make grants and build capacity for organizations that do the work that you do. So we already have some questions that have come in through the Facebook Live and through an email that we have set up. You can email us directly with any of your questions at heartlandchallenge@kauffman.org, so please do that. So we'll start with the first one, and we get this one a lot. Can I talk one-on-one with a program officer about the programs in the Heartland Challenge?
Sure. The answer, unfortunately, is no. Not because we don't love you and we don't want to talk with all of you, but really there are so many applicants to RFPs like this, it would be impossible for us to fairly answer all the questions. So that's why we rely on mechanisms like this Facebook Live, shameless plug, or the email address, a place where we can capture the questions, share them with everybody so that we're not, favoring certain people with whom we have relationships already. That's also a really important point about why we do RFPs in the first place. It's so that, we know that we can get proposals from everywhere, we can judge them objectively against all the other opportunities that we have in the region, and it keeps bias out of our process a little bit better.
Yep, absolutely. So we also get this question a lot. Probably the most common question we get asked across the entire foundation is, how do you define entrepreneurship and/or an entrepreneur? Mm-hmm. And so we made a handy glossary to do just that. When you say entrepreneur, who do you mean? And I'm going to just borrow from the glossary and read, An entrepreneur is an individual who has turned an idea into an organized effort to create and deliver goods or services in pursuit of profit to fill a need and or to solve a problem. And so we use a very inclusive definition of entrepreneur. We want to support anyone that wants to start something new that makes their community better, their family more prosperous, and the region more economically empowered.
That's a great job, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
it's almost like I rehearsed.
Yeah. Wow. Weird. You know, I want to give a shout out to some people that are watching. You know, we've got people on the feed from St. Louis. We're so sorry. Just kidding. We're from Kansas City. It's a thing. Wichita, from Spirit Lake, Iowa. Thanks for joining us, guys. That's awesome. Of course, our folks here in Kansas City are watching. You know, the University of Nebraska.
Idea Hub, Nebraska.
Idea Hub, Nebraska.
And News. It might be the same thing.
Wow, we've got a lot of Nebraskans on the call. You know what they say about Nebraska, Chris?
Oh, what do they say?
It's not for everybody. That's literally their tourism.
I know, they're divided on, yeah. Moving on. All right, we have some questions coming in. Will I be able to view a recorded version of this Facebook Live event? Where could I access it? The answer to the first part is yes. I'm looking at our PA, our public affairs team. Where will it be hosted? On our page. On
the FAQ.
On the FAQ. There's a frequently asked questions section of the Heartland Challenge RFP website or page, and we will post a link to this Facebook Live recording on there. I've been asked about my mug. It says, I was there. Natalie Self, a former colleague and great friend of our team, bought me this, and I don't know where she bought it, but it says Kansas on it, and it has a bunch of Kansas things on it, and it makes me a big fan of it. So,
that's awesome.
What does the Kauffman Foundation see as the biggest hurdle to equitable entrepreneurship in the 4-state region?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, when we think about challenges for this RFP, of course, we're thinking about what are the biggest challenges this region is facing. And for us, equity very quickly emerged as one of those. You know, the demographics of this region are changing. That's a reality that we see today. And, you know, for instance, when you look at the population growth that's projected in this region over the next 20 years, communities of color are growing faster in this region than almost anywhere else in the country. That's a huge opportunity to put equitable entrepreneurship support at the center of the work that we're doing, and to really jump ahead of other regions because of our kind of embrace of the full richness and diversity that we see here in the Heartland and business support.
Yeah, and that's, to add to that, that's an opportunity for large cities and rural areas in the region. You just have to look at like Southwest Kansas, for example, and their burgeoning immigrant population and communities of color in that region to see that this is an economic asset. This is the key to the future of the region, and a lot of the hurdles and barriers that we have to look at are systemic in nature, and there's a lot of work that has to be done to address them.
Yeah, so when we think about, you know, how do we address these challenges through philanthropy, we really have to ask ourselves, you know, what really fits in our toolbox? What can we best address through the tool of grant making to nonprofit organizations? And so I'm sure many of you are people who we've met with over the last 6 months. We've been on a road show all over the Heartland, trust us.
Yeah.
And we've talked with, you know, over 120 entrepreneurs, stakeholders, investors, you know, potential philanthropic partners to hear about what you're focused on and what challenges you run into. One theme that really came out in those conversations is the presence of gatekeepers in this region. And gatekeepers are those folks who can usually distribute resources like access to capital or mentorship to entrepreneurs. Anytime you've got one person making those decisions, of course, there's the potential for human bias to creep into those processes. And so that's why in Challenge 1 of the RFP, you see us really focusing on setting objective and transparent standards to make sure that bias is a lesser part of our processes that we use to distribute resources throughout the region.
Absolutely. So we're starting to get a lot of questions coming in. We'll start with this one on eligibility. Are 501c3 private operating foundations eligible to apply as a 501c3, or are you only seeking public charities? That's a great question. That is one that we may actually have to get some. Have you talked with people about that?
Yeah, we've talked with we've talked with legal about that. I think that one came in through the email.
Mm.
So we're if you have that particular challenge, email us. Let us know if you haven't already. It doesn't necessarily preclude you, but it makes sure that your application might be held to a higher standard, because the process that we use to make grants to people that are not overtly charitable organizations is much more complex. So let us know if you're sending in an application from that kind of an organization, and we'll take those on a case-by-case basis.
Awesome. So it looks like we have a question from Kelly from the Facebook Live feed. And it goes, if multiple organizations from various states wish to submit a collaborative project, should there be 4 project ideas, or do you prefer just one fiscal agent? There are a couple of question points I think in here. I think we want a little bit more information, but I'll try to answer it the best I can. The first part, collaborative projects that are regional in scope, that might involve multiple communities, multiple states, we love to see that. But at the same time, that may be a pretty complex project. And so that kind of leads to the second part, which is 4 project ideas in 1 grant may be really complex. And so we would have to learn more about what you're planning. Is it 4 projects in 1 grant? We'd really have to get into the weeds on that. On the fiscal agent piece, we make a grant to a single organization. So it would have to be structured that we are making a grant. Even if work is happening in multiple locations and with multiple partners, we are making a single grant to a single organization or fiscal agent. Anything you would add?
Yeah, just as Chris said, we love to see those collaborative proposals. That's why we're doing this work, because there's rich networks throughout these regions that we know are already talking, and we think with a little bit of financial oomph, we can really accelerate the amount of collaboration and cross-regional programs that are happening. So yes, we're excited to see those kinds of applications.
And I'll take this moment to reference again the email address that you can send complex, more longer questions to. It's Heartland Challenge at Kauffman.org. And I would encourage, I think it was Kelly who asked that question, please submit that question, because we would love to learn more, and if that would be helpful to everyone else, we can share that in the FAQ.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So from Renee, can cities apply? Are these related questions to the one from Laura? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can cities apply? Yes. Government entities can apply.
Mm-hmm.
From Laura, can small rural committees apply? I would say generally yes. I would want to know more about what you mean when you say small rural committee. But so if you could submit a question to the Heartland Challenge at Kauffman.org and give us a little bit more information on what you mean by small rural committee, we'll follow up on that.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add there is, we really want to make sure applications are coming from one specific organization that can then take accountability for, the work that you're doing. And so if you're working with a committee that is kind of casual, or it doesn't have, a formal home, think about what partners you have in your area that are 501c3 organizations or chambers that you could, or city governments that you could apply with as a group.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, think of extension offices, community foundations, chambers. I think you mentioned chambers, because we really do need, like we said earlier, a single fiscal entity that we can make the grant to, that can handle the reporting, that can handle all the various aspects of the administration of the grant, and that we can do due diligence on. So from Rick, what kind of matching funds would be useful to our application?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And Rick, I feel like I've got some good news for you. And that is that we don't require matching funds of any kind for this application. It's always helpful to show that there are more people in your community that are excited about the work that you're doing. But there's no matching fund requirement for this RFP. So you can breathe easy on that, right?
Yeah. And I would add to that, a yes and on that. It's not a requirement, and just because an application has matching funds doesn't make it more competitive than one that doesn't. But one thing we are looking for, we hope to not start things that don't have a way to sustain themselves. Mm-hmm. So if there are potential local funders that want to continue this project, if it is successful, that is compelling to us.
Yeah.
We want to see things continue beyond the grant.
Quick reminder that we are live if you're just joining us from the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. We're here to answer your burning questions about the 2020 Heartland Challenge RFP. And before we jump back into the questions, I got a joke for you, Chris. Are you
ready? Always ready.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Iowa.
Iowa what? Iowa who?
Iowa wants you to apply for the Heartland Challenge.
Did we lose all our viewers on that one? Like, is everyone just logging off now? Oh, okay.
Oh, that's great. People love my jokes. I don't know if you guys give me a hard time.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
All right. So Andy asks us, what type of projects or costs are we discouraged from applying for? Anything you see often, but is a hard no? Well, a hard no is always brick and mortar. In real estate, our funding is programmatic in nature, and so we do not fund brick and mortar projects.
Yeah, and we, that would qualify if it were a capital campaign.
Yeah,
we don't do capital campaigns. One other thing that I want to put in here that's especially relevant if you're watching from a university is overhead costs. We get asked a lot if we accept overhead costs as part of a program budget. The answer is always no. We don't accept general university overhead costs. But a gray area on this is we know that there are a lot of expenses that an entrepreneur support organization accrues every day in the management of a program that really are directly related to the management of a program, but maybe are proportional costs. Things like, a proportion of your CFO's time that works on reporting, or a proportion of your rent for the classes that you're holding, a proportion of your receptionist time as she greets people who are walking into a workshop. And so those kinds of overhead costs that are really contributing to this program's management are always acceptable as part of, a line item for salary or facilities, if you want to include that, if you feel that's important. Just make sure you make really clear in your budget narrative on that grant application how this furthers the programmatic work that you're doing.
Awesome. So Rick asks, who makes good partners in an application? That's a great question. I think we maybe both answered that. Maybe I'll try first, and then you tell me what I missed. We always want to know that programs are informed by the actual experiences of entrepreneurs. So we're not saying that entrepreneurs have to partner in the delivery of the program or anything like that, but in some way they partnered in the design of a program, that they had some input. Partners that help you understand, individuals that maybe live in systemically left behind communities. So if you are in an area that has a large Latinx population, it would be great if you could partner with an organization that could help you reach those individuals. And then of course there are, like we mentioned earlier, you may need to partner with organizations if you are kind of an informal committee to actually submit the application and handle the reporting. Anything you would add?
Rick, I would just answer your question with a question. Who are the best partners to help you move your work forward? I think a lot of times people on the ground are a much better job of the quality of partnerships than we are sitting here in Kansas City looking out. So if there are organizations, even if they seem a little out of the box, that you think it's important for you to partner with, you're never going to get a penalty from us for knowing your community and knowing what works. So.
Awesome. From Lisa, and I think this is a question for you, can different departments within a university apply? If so, are there any guidelines on how to identify this?
Yeah, so Lisa, I know elsewhere in the FAQs, one of the things that we've had as a requirement for the program publicly is that an organization can only choose one challenge to apply for. Right, we ask that everybody make a choice. The reason that we do that is because we don't want people to go off mission in an attempt to get more grant funding. We really want to make sure that what you're doing is aligned with your organization's mission and pushing it forward. And the chance that all three of these challenges are aligned with an organization's mission are pretty slim. But in the case of a university, we know those are huge institutions. Bits of those operate independently. So I think it's probably less concerning for us if disparate parts of a university are applying. We probably want to see some kind of indication that of how that's aligned with the university's mission or strategic plan, and how those things may or may not be working together. So what we want to see is that this is not just a bunch of people within the university kind of going off and doing their own thing. This is part of everybody working together to advance the university's mission. So if you've got more than one person applying from different parts of a university, I would say make sure to address that in your application.
Awesome. So we have a couple more questions coming in. I really like this question. The second one, is your t-shirt an indicator that you will be favoring Kansas projects? So if you, just so you can see it, it says ad astra per aspera, which is the state motto of Kansas. And I am a lifelong Kansan, very proud of being from Kansas, but no, it is not. We have a great, diverse, just really intelligent and caring team from across the foundation that helps us review applications. Every application goes through multiple rounds. And even the core team that runs the Heartland Challenge, myself, Melissa, Aaron, our friends in evaluation, come from across the region. So Nate, who leads all the evaluation work, he's from Iowa.
So Iowa folks, you've got a person in your corner.
Yeah, we have plenty of folks from Missouri. We have folks from Nebraska. Our CEO, Wendy Gillis, is from Nebraska. Yeah. And we're all very proud that we all hail from this region, from across the region.
So we've got a variety of state-based checks and balances in place.
We got that covered. But I do love this shirt.
Yeah.
But,
I love this shirt. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Chris and I both bought our shirts especially for this day.
We did.
So.
All right, Erica. When I see the names, by the way, I try to guess who it is in the region. So I think Erica might be from Nebraska, I'm guessing. Can you help paint a picture from what Kauffman hopes to accomplish for the communities of practice? How can we best position to be part of that from a give-take standpoint? So just a little background. Every grant that is awarded, or organization that is awarded a grant through this RFP, will be required to participate in a community of practice that is aligned with their challenge. So there will be one focused on Challenge 1 and equitable programs, one focused on the rural cooperative challenge, and then commercialization. And there is also an opportunity for folks that don't get a grant through this RFP to apply to be part of the community of practice. We hope, I'll try to paint this picture, we hope that we have equal representation across the 4 states, that the folks that are part of each challenge or each community of practice are in a position to first connect with each other, learn about the work they do, share best practices, but then turn around and apply that to the work that they're doing in their region. And then we also hope that each community of practice contributes to our greater understanding of the problems across the region and improves our grant making as we go forward. And you could probably add a lot more to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good summary. You know, we're hoping really to convene the people that we know already sometimes have loose relationships and talk to them about what the best practices are, what people from elsewhere are doing, you know, and ideally at the end of a year-long, you know, chain of meetings, webinars, conversations, we'll come out of that with a really good idea of what we need to do to move forward on solutions to these issues in the region collaboratively. So we could sit here in Kansas City and we could do a really in-depth landscape analysis, which we did for this RFP, and then we could tell you what we think are the best ways to solve these problems. But you guys are on the ground every day. You're doing this work, and you have the practical information that we don't always sitting in our chairs. So it's really important that we integrate people from across the region in the conversation of what these solutions look like, and that may have the chance to inform future grant making that we do.
Perfect. And I'll take this opportunity to again reference the email. We can answer more questions about the community of practice if you just email us at heartlandchallenge@kauffman.org. And you, on the RFP page, the Heartland Challenge RFP page, there's a link to click to the application for the community of practice. And I would encourage everyone to find that.
Yeah.
From Raj, are registration fees for outcome-driven conferences permitted? So I'm assuming that, Raj, you're asking about if you reference a conference in your outcomes, or probably an output, can you charge registration fees for that? And the answer is, I don't think we've ever been asked this question, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we may. If you have a different question, Raj, let us know through the email, and we'll get back to you with a more exact answer. Yeah.
From Rick, How are the funds dispersed, and how much funding will be provided?
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
This is Rick from Kansas City.
Yeah.
So how the funds are dispersed and how much funding will be provided. So all of these grant applications are limited at $100,000 in 1 year for a proposal. So this is not like going to be the thing that that probably moves your organization into the future. This is not a capacity building program. We're really looking at to catalyze new ideas, new ways to attack these 3 challenges in those veins that are referenced in our RFP. So $100,000, in the context of programmatic work is not always a ton of money. So keep that in mind, think really carefully about what's necessary in these budgets and in your program plans. As in terms of how they're dispersed, typically we work with that lead organization, the one that submits the application, and we disperse it when the application is fully approved through ACH transfer. And we'll work with you, if you get to that round, to make sure that process is set up. And if you are working with partners, it's pretty common, I think, for one organization to contract with another for services. So if you have 2-3 partners around the table that are all going to be kind of delivering part of that project, seeing contracts between those organizations is pretty common.
ACH transfer. I thought we were just going to show up with bags of money.
Oh yeah, no, that's typically
that's our backup plan.
Susan, our friend here from finance, watching with us, is freaking out.
Kevin asks, for those not successful in this round, or for those not ready to apply in this round, can you speak to the future opportunities for this challenge, such as a national round or new round in 2021? Yes, so there are a couple things coming up. So yes, I think it's reasonable to expect another round in 2021. Details to be determined. As for the national round, in the latter half of 2020, we will be launching a national RFP. Details still to be determined. It's in the planning stage right now. That will fund collaborations between organizations that are based in the 4-state region with organizations based outside of the region. And so more details to come on that. David asks, could one organization be part of 2 proposals from 2 separate challenges, one in a lead role and one in a support role? And I think this might be something that commonly happens. So one of the questions we would have to ask, and I'm curious what you think on this, because we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah.
And that might happen is that there is a really good structure where you have a lead organization who's the applicant, and then another one that's like advising on the project or providing some sort of outreach or some sort of service. And that seems to be a great thing to have happen. What we don't want to have happen is that because of the limitation of one application per organization, that an organization applies for one challenge and then they partner with another organization to just try and sneak another application in. It really, you'll have to explain the structure of the collaboration between the 2 organizations.
Yeah, and some questions that I would have on that in addition is, how are these 2 different projects directly aligned with your mission and your experiences, your competencies at an organization? I mean, these are really disparate challenges. And so if you feel well qualified for more than one and you're participating in more than one application, we're really going to want to know, what kind of support do you have behind you so that you can take on 2 new projects at once. Having worked at an ESO, starting one new thing can be really difficult and challenging. Starting 2 at once is really, really hard. And so we're going to want to see what kind of support structure you have in place, and make sure that you're not just kind of applying because the opportunities are out there, applying because this is core to the work that you want to do in the future. This is aligned with your organization's strategic plan. This is aligned with your mission, and you are the best person to move this work forward.
Yeah. Another thing I would add to that, so when we're talking about collaborations between organizations in the region, thinking to past RFPs and applications we've read, sometimes it's easy to see how the collaboration is structured, who's doing what, role clarity and division of labor. Sometimes it's not, and sometimes it comes across like organizations are assuming on the behalf of others that they're going to do certain things, certain activities. And that's where we see projects fall apart, when they can't do that thing. So information that you can give us around, like, yes, we are the lead organization, we are doing X activity, and our partner organization is going to do X, Y, and Z, that's really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there will be parts, I think, later in the process where if you want to, you can upload like letters of support from other peoples that are partners that outline their commitment to working together. That's not something that you're going to have to do in this round one. It's just one of those things that's down the line if you make it through, and we're continuing on with that application.
Yep. So we have a great question from Ted. They're all great, but I like this question particularly.
Way to go, Ted.
Ted asks, should applying programs be new or novel, or can they be continuing work or expanding pilot programs? And additionally, is there an orientation toward digital versus in-person training and support? So that's really two questions. The first, we don't have a preference on new versus continuing. We expect to see both and hope to see both. It really comes down to execution. Can you actually deliver on the program? Can you report on it? Can you measure the success? Those sorts of things. And then digital versus in-person training and supports. Every project is different. We would have a lot of questions around digital.
Yeah.
Like, are you building a new platform? Are you building a new curriculum? Or are you leveraging something that already exists? We've seen it work really well. We've seen it work very poorly in the past. So it just really depends.
Yeah, so I mean, like Chris is referencing one of the things that we do behind the scenes that grantees don't always see from the front end, but we're constantly, when you're sending in a report on a grant, I mean, for those of you that have worked with us before, that process will be very familiar to you. But, when you're sending in those reports, we're actually reading them, number one. And we're really thinking critically about what are the themes that we see and the things that people are learning. What are the challenges that people are running into, and what are those themes? And so one of the themes that's come out for us in past grant making is really around digital platforms. That's really kind of a very complex for-profit business model. I mean, there are digital platforms that have been built up over decades. And so if that's something that's on your, we have found in our grant making that it's really hard for us to support those adequately and give them the true runway they need to grow. That's not to say that like digital, like remote workshops aren't an option. Like all of those things absolutely are. But if you're proposing like building, like I'm throwing this out there, like a Facebook for rural America, that's something that our grant making lessons have pretty clearly said that's really not where we can have the biggest impact.
Yeah. That's not to say the project doesn't have merit. It may just be that we aren't the best funder for it.
Correct.
So a quick reminder, please continue to send in questions. These are really tremendous, and they help everyone across the region when we can answer them in a transparent way.
Plus, if you don't keep sending in questions, I got more jokes. Nobody wants that.
Okay, so what is the maximum amount that can be requested from one grant application? It's $100,000. These are $100,000 12-month grant, each of them. Mm-hmm. There was a question asked earlier that was removed from the list, was can a nonprofit who receives a grant through this application or through this RFP, can they then contract with for-profit companies to provide services? And that is fairly common on a lot of grants. So yes. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so, if you guys are watching, continue to check out Kauffman.org/currents to see great stories on entrepreneurship ecosystems from the Heartland region. And really specifically, there's a great article that you should check out up right now. Search for entrepreneurial ecosystems to move ideas to reality, or Because of Three Coolers, Mildred, Kansas dances on Saturday nights. These are two really great stories about our ecosystem. Also, one of our latest Currents posts really lays out the why behind our focus on equity in the Heartland, talks about the full kind of rich diversity that's a part of our history in this region, and how sometimes, those caricatures that we paint, that we all participate in, of the Heartland is kind of small towns only or rural only. They miss the full and the full diversity and richness of communities that have been in this region throughout our history. So, all of these stories are important, and if you want to hear a few of them, check out that latest piece in Currents.
All right, we have a couple more questions coming in. Again, please continue to send in questions. These have been great. And if you have a longer question that you want to send to us, again, Heartland Challenge at Kauffman.org. The first question from Steve: does the lead organization have to be headquartered in the Heartland area? Or can this be a new outreach program being done in other states that is aligned with our mission? Quick review, when we're talking about the Heartland for this RFP, we're defining it as the 4-state region of Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. For this RFP, yes, they must be headquartered in the Heartland area, in one of those 4 states, and doing most of their work in one of or several of these 4 states. There is an RFP that will launch in late 2020 that would fund collaborations between organizations based in the region and organizations based outside the region that might be aligned with your mission. And we can send more details as those come together, but that sounds like it might be a fit for that.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add there is, there are a lot of national organizations that have chapters that are entities based in this region. So if you're one of those, consider running an application if you feel that this challenge is a good fit through one of those local entities or chapters.
Aaron asks, you fund many Casey area ESOs.
Hey.
Well, that's just, actually, we'll come back.
We're going to come back to you, Aaron.
Yeah.
We've got a special guest that's walking in, joining us right now.
From Iowa.
All the way from Iowa. Nate Madden from our, here comes Dan right here in the middle.
All right.
Yeah, this is Nate Madden from our evaluations team, everybody. Welcome to Nate.
Thanks.
Nate, we've actually, while you're here, we've got a question for you. Can you talk a little bit about the evaluative strategy that you have?
Yeah. So you'll notice on each of the grants, we'll be talking about metrics, basic outputs and outcomes to help you track progress as you do the work of your grant. And I think the first thing I always like to say on those is that they are 80% for learning, 20% for, just kind of keeping track of what's going on. And we use them because a lot of times when you set out to do the work, you're thinking about what you want to do, you have a really good idea, and sometimes things change. And when at the beginning of the grant you lay out the metrics for what you want to do, it gives you something to reflect back on. And we're really big on learning here, and that's one of the big drives we've been doing here internally, and we're working with grantees and people we contract with to carry that forward as well.
That's awesome. Tell the people where you're from, Nate.
I'm from extreme northern Iowa, a small town called Ringstead. It's about, if you're familiar with Okoboji and Spirit Lake area, it's about 40 minutes east of there. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so Spirit Lake folks, this is your guy. And just because we did get that question about Kansas favoritism, just so you know, Nate has veto power over all of our grants.
Oh, that's news to me.
Again, very careful.
Nate's a part of our judgment process here at the foundation. So you've got an Iowa advocate right here.
Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, and Kansas all covered.
Yep.
So we're going to ask Nate a few questions. Please, if you have questions about evaluation and metrics, please go ahead and submit them in the Facebook Live feed, and we'll answer those now. Nate, can you talk to us, everyone on the Facebook Live, about how reporting typically works on like an actual day-to-day basis?
Sure. So we typically have one progress report per year, or if it's just a one-year grant, it'll usually be a final report. There might be a touch point in between, depending on what program staff decide. But during either the progress or the final report, you're basically prompted to fill in, if it's a progress report, how far you've come on some of the metrics in the grant, and also to kind of reflect on some of the things you've learned thus far. And if it's a final report, it's that plus kind of like, give us all you got. Tell us every single thing that, when you think back on that year or two that you were doing the work, really sticks out in your mind. But, in ways that helped you course correct for the programming in the future, things that were really successful, things that didn't work well, and what you did to overcome some of those challenges. And that's, as I mentioned before, the metrics are really important for that, but we also have guidance on some of the learnings and lessons, and that's a really big part of our reporting that we actually restructured in 2018 to make more friendly to the grantee and to program staff. basically there will be a call. Like instead of just like typing up what was learned and sending it off into the void, we wanted to build in some time for POs to connect with grantees to talk about, you know, what happened, and to get, and those are probably my favorite parts to read, because it just gives me a kind of a richer sort of understanding, and it feels a little bit more personable in terms of helping me know what was going on in the grant. And I just want you to know that, like, your reports do not just like go into thin air. And in fact, I actually really like to read them. So you have at least one huge fan in the foundation, but you definitely have even more. What we'll do is, and we're working on these, and getting better on this, is we try and roll up what we learn from grants into public facing reports. Right now, we're working on our 3rd annual learning report, and some of the work that goes across the foundation, and some of the work that's been done with the entrepreneur support organization folks goes into that, and we like to roll it up and, you know, get it out there into the world. So, and we do have some support with a 3rd-party evaluator to help tailor that feedback specifically to you, as being a part of this portfolio.
A couple of that reminds me of a few reporting related things from a program officer's perspective. One, we get a lot of grantees in the past that hesitate to give us the bad news, and we really like to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like that allows us to maximize our learning. We're not compliance officers. You know, we do want to see we ensure that the funding is spent in a responsible way, but we're here to learn from the work that you do, as Nate just said. The other thing, right now, many of you are writing applications, and I would encourage you all to think critically about what you have capacity to actually report on. If you propose an activity but have no way of actually gathering data to report on it, that will eventually be a problem. So please propose things that you can actually report on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you know, we have one last evaluation question about whether these learning reports will be shared with communities of practice. Yeah, I think this is something that, you know, when the timing matches up, we'll share those with the communities of practice and try and make sure that everybody has the benefit of this knowledge. It's also worth mentioning, as Nate kind of alluded to, all these learning reports that we prepare as a foundation every year that talk about all of our grant learnings. They're available on our website right now, so if you have a curiosity, go check them out and see what we've learned through our grant making over the last year. So, man, thanks so much for stopping by, Nate.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Thank you, and hope to work with you all in the future.
Awesome.
All right. Do you want to go through a recap of the specific challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we wanted to make sure everybody understands is the themes of these 3 challenges. You know, the Heartland challenges, as it were. So I want to talk about each of those in detail real quick. So the first challenge is really asking ESOs to submit proposals to establish, hand in hand with gatekeepers in your local area, milestones that govern access to networks and resources, and to communicate those transparently. So we talked about gatekeepers a little bit earlier. If you're wondering what that means, those are those people that stand between entrepreneurs and access to capital. A lot of times they're making judgment calls about whether entrepreneurs are ready to get in front of an angel group, or ready to get in front of a lending committee. And those people are humans, right? There are a lot of gatekeepers in this region. That's something that we've heard from you loud and clear. But all those people are humans, and for that reason they have human biases. And so sometimes when there's a lack of transparency, those biases can color processes. And so what we're really asking ESOs to do is to open up the doors, make those guidelines a little bit more transparent to entrepreneurs in your community by working hand in hand with gatekeepers to understand how they make decisions, and establish those clear milestones to get into those networks, to get in front of those resource providers. So,
we had a question pop up. Please continue to send your questions in. The question was in reference to that challenge: is a local government a gatekeeper? And my answer would be potentially yes.
Yeah,
depending on the context.
Yeah, so I mean, local governments offer a lot of resources, and sometimes there are people in local governments that kind of govern who gets access to those resources, whether it's incentives or
county and state governments as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I think a local government probably could be considered a gatekeeper. Great question. Yeah, so that's challenge 1. Feel free to keep sending your questions in on challenge 1, but we're going to move on and talk a little bit about challenge 2, but I'm going to kick this over to Chris since he is the resident rural expert.
So challenge 2 is focused on rural revitalization. So, we all are familiar with the challenges in rural, changing demographics. Some areas are seeing depopulation, an aging population, and that presents several challenges, both on startup and on retention of businesses that are providing valuable services in a community. And we, in Challenge 2, hope to encourage the exploration and adaptation of cooperative models as a viable vehicle to start new ventures and or transfer or transition an existing business to new entrepreneurs in the community. And we understand that this, in some areas, that this is already happening in showing promising results. And some of these areas are in the heartland, and some of them are outside the heartland. We want to encourage organizations in the region to educate entrepreneurs on these models, on cooperative models. Anything that you would add?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the thing that we've always talked about is, in some ways co-ops are the oldest idea for a business model in rural America, but in the context that we found in our landscape analysis of this region that capital is leaving the region, it makes sense that people want to band together, they want to use pooled resources, mitigate everybody's risk to help their communities kind of succeed and to make sure that they're vibrant places to live for a long time.
Yeah, and we've already seen there is some research out there that suggests that cooperative models are they provide more value to the community. The pay gap between those leading the business and those working the business is lessened. The ownership of the business is more diverse, and they're more resilient. And I think those are things that we want to see across the region.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, and before we get back to your question, Aaron, we haven't forgotten about you. We're going to talk real quick about Challenge 3. So Challenge 3, it really addresses commercialization infrastructure in this region. And so for those of you who are familiar with that, really there's a process that is used to spin intellectual property-based businesses out of universities to create new businesses in the region. That's called commercialization. And, there are a lot of portions of that process that work together to get us to the place where new businesses are really being created. You start as a professor doing research, maybe getting a federal R&D grant. Then you raise your hand and you register your idea with your tech transfer office, maybe within the university. So you have to, identify that this is an opportunity that might lead to commercialization. Then you patent the idea and you go through that process with the federal government, and then finally universities license those patents to small companies or emerging companies to create new businesses. So really along every single part of that timeline, we really struggle across this region by and large. So there are bright spots, Washington University in St. Louis has a ton of research development funding and commercialization activity. Iowa State, you all are doing pretty well out there in Ames. We've heard a lot of great things about your commercialization activity. But there's a lot of room for improvement across the region. So things like winning R&D grants like Small Business Innovation Research or SBIR grants from the federal government, implementing I-Core programs and things like that, or applying to become an I-Core node or an I-Core hub. These are all opportunities that could really help us enrich this infrastructure. And at the end of the day, that's really important because we want to make sure that across this region we have a rich pipeline of great opportunities that we can build into businesses that will continue to have an outsized impact as they grow in this region for many years to come. So this is, commercialization is really, a region-wide deal flow problem, and we're asking people in this challenge number 3 to work together across universities to address these challenges. I know that sometimes that can be difficult. It's hard to imagine a day where KU, K-State, and Mizzou, just to use a local reference. I'll get in the room and play nice, but really we've got to band together. We've got to get over these parochial challenges to move forward as a region. And so we're really hoping that we'll put our rivalries aside at the end of basketball season, and we'll all get together and work together to move commercialization forward in the region. So, do you want to go back to Aaron? I feel bad we're leaving.
Yeah, we got a question about a couple things. I know we only have about 10 minutes left on this. We will stay as long for the 10 minutes to answer as many questions as we can. So please, if you've been holding on to a question, go ahead and send it, and we will try our best to answer it. And if you can't get it, if you don't feel comfortable asking it in a public forum, send it to Heartland Challenge at Kauffman.org, and we will answer it. And we will be answering any questions that come in after and publishing it on the website. No. Anyway, let's answer Aaron's question first.
Yeah.
You're up.
Okay. So Aaron asked, we fund many KC area ESOs, universities, and others that do work now already in the area of these challenges. How should this grant opportunity be considered in the context of these other investments? That's a great question, Aaron. As Aaron said, we've got a long history of funding entrepreneur support organizations and others working in this community here in Kansas City. Right now, some things that might preclude you from participating, if you've got another grant for the same project, it's probably unlikely we're going to fund you to do the same work twice. So keep that in mind. Seems obvious, but you never know.
You never know.
And again, we're really going to be double checking as we go through this process. Is the challenge that you're applying to really aligned with your organization's mission, with your strategic plan, with how you see your organization growing in this region? And so if that's the case, if you're in Kansas City and one of these happens to, click for you, it seems like the perfect opportunity that you've been waiting for to talk about this issue, or it's already part of your strategic plan, do absolutely apply for this. If you're from UMKC, call me. You're a special circumstance. So literally, if you are from UMKC and you got an idea, send us a note at heartlandchallenge@kauffman.org, and we'll talk to you one-on-one. Everybody else in Kansas City, we hope to see your applications too. This is Kansas City. Although I don't want to express any inappropriate bias by saying this, but Kansas City, is the heart of the heartland in a lot of ways, and so we're happy to fund a lot more great proposals here and across the region.
So another question regarding challenge number 2 from Imogene. She asks, is it limited to examining cooperative models? Would other transition types or ownership models be considered, such as city-owned businesses or something similar? We would consider it. This is a little bit new for us.
Yeah.
We aren't quite sure what we're going to see. We hope to see some very innovative projects. And I would add to the first part of the question, it's not just examining these models, but educating on them. And ultimately, we would hope to see some business starts or transitions as part of the project. So, yeah.
Cool. I just want to make a quick point real quick. And this is something that's really important to me as somebody who's been working in the Heartland for a long time. And Chris, I know you have too. It's unlikely that we're going to go through this whole process without coming across a proposal from somebody we know. We've been traveling and meeting people across the region. We've been working in Kansas City for a long time. But we're working really hard to put things in place like, rubrics for our grant making that us and all of our other colleagues within the foundation use and stick to as ways to judge these proposals. And so if you're worried about, you're from the region, but you haven't met us yet and you think somebody might know us better, don't let that stop you from sending in an application. We're really doing our best to make sure everything's unbiased. And while, we can't guarantee that there won't be anybody that we know that submits a proposal, in fact, there almost certainly will, we're really working hard to make sure that we're objective in this process.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So you mentioned rubrics. We have a uniform rubric that we use across all of the challenges and across all of our RFPs. And one thing to appreciate about our process is that every single application is read multiple times by multiple people, and there's no single person that makes the decision. It really, the applications that we fund really have to run the gauntlet. They are heavily scrutinized by multiple people with diverse perspectives, and so we take that very seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of those people, you met Nate earlier today on our process. If you were to pan the camera backwards, there's a whole lot of people in this room, many of whom participate in that process with us, our friends from PA and finance. So we've got a whole team effort here at the foundation that works alongside you. So I am so sad to say this, Chris. Is there any other jokes you want to tell before we close it out?
A reminder, I think you're about to say this.
Yeah.
The deadline to apply is, I don't have any other jokes, but maybe a Kansas fact.
Oh, good. Go for it.
The deadline to apply is 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time on March 9th. So I'm looking at everyone in far western Kansas. There are 4 counties in Mountain Time. Note it is Central Standard Time if you plan on submitting an application. 11:59 p.m.
Look at that. Snuck a fun fact.
There you go.
Oh, sneaking that right.
Oh.
So, we're sorry. We've had such a great time talking with all of you today. Thank you so much for the amazing, thoughtful questions. It's time for us to wrap up, but if you have a question that you got shy about or that you think about after the Facebook Live is over, send it to Heartland Challenge at Kauffman.org, and we'll get back to you just as quick as we can. We'll also publish these questions and many more on our FAQ page. So thank you all for joining us this morning. And we know there's a short application window at this point, so we'll try and get back to all those questions as quickly as we can. And last reminder, the deadline to apply is 11:59 p.m. March 9th. Don't be late.
Central Standard Time.
Central Standard Time. We'll see you there.